Allan Aguirre with your Incorruptible 2-minute warning for Friday, December 23rd. This is the final day of this week, and we're talking about my Jesus. That's what we've been talking about. We've been talking about my Jesus. And I don't want this to be this crazy anti-Christmas, crazy whatever. But when you start saying stuff like my Jesus, the vast majority of evangelicals out there, even no matter how long they've known me, start thinking, Alan's getting into his weird cultish stuff. I don't know if you knew this, but a lot of these people think I'm in a cult. Yeah. They start thinking, because you're not using their language. You're not using their verbiage. And because you're not doing things a certain way, like, for example, if I don't constantly spew out the Christian bookstore doily, warm fuzzy verses, then they think I've been compromised. But anyway, before we even get into it, hey, it's Friday. Let's go into Friday mode. We have a thing called Friday mode. This is Friday mode. Oh, and that's a bit much right there. Let me see if I can. Yeah, it's a little weird. Anyway, it's Friday. On Friday, what we do is we break it down. We have a little conversation about what it is that we're talking about. We start off with a theme, and then on Friday, I try to unpack that theme. And this week's theme was my Jesus. So hey, be sure to like, subscribe. Oh, let me turn on the chat. I forgot to do that. Be sure to like, subscribe, whatever, depending on the platform you're using. Be sure to do all those things. Like, subscribe, and do I still have Photoshop open? I do, because I made a background for us that I used. Yeah, I'll hit save. Why not? Photoshop. Quit Photoshop. We don't need to have Photoshop running in this background. Or that. What was I going to say? Yeah, depending on the platform you're watching us on, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, leave a comment, do all the social media stuff that you've been trained to do. Because hey, that's how we know that you're out there, and it helps with they say that it helps with the algorithms and all that. So, you got to trust the science. That's what they told us to do. They told us to trust the science. So, what does that Friday view look like without the? Oh, look at that! So you can see my hats and my scarves. It's not a very attractive picture, is it? Yeah, it's not very attractive, is it? I don't think so. But anyway, angles. It's all about angles. So anyway, I'm not. I don't want to make this weird and all that, but here's why I say that. Because as soon as I start talking about my Jesus, as soon as I start talking about the Jesus I believe in, and again in January I will be having my 42nd year. So I've been 42 years saved come January. Can you believe it's that time of year? I can't, because then that means my birthday's coming. But no lava lamp. Yeah, no lava lamp. Anyway, that's my reminder that I'm supposed to be doing this today. Well, Monday through Friday. But anyway, here's why I say what I'm saying about that. It's because every time I start talking about my Jesus, every time I start describing or talking about the biblical Jesus, the Jesus you literally find in the Bible, whether it's Old or New Testament, as soon as I start talking about that guy, evangelical Christianity starts getting really uncomfortable, and they start getting real judgmental, and they start freaking out, and they tap out. I don't know to what extent they even finish watching or listening, because they tap out. Because what I'm saying conflicts with what their pastor told them. What I'm saying conflicts with what they learned at seminary. What I'm saying conflicts with what their denomination has shoved down their throats. And when I say shoved down their throats, I mean shoved down their throats. And just like any other cult, yeah, I used that word. Just like any other cult, they're discouraged from going out and figuring out, right? And what are some of the terms that we use in Christianity? Prove it, test it. Test what I'm saying. Test the scriptures. Be a good Berean, right? They use that terminology, but they don't even actually know what it means. Because what the Bereans actually used the law and the prophets to determine whether what Paul was saying is true. Today's Bereans in modern day Christianity, they call themselves Bereans, but they actually avoid the law and the prophets. They actually don't know what the law and the prophets say, and they actually renounce the law and the prophets. Here's the Christian definition of a cult. Any group, any sect that would say they are believers of the Bible and believers of Jesus, but then omit the vast majority of it or come up with stuff that's not in there as part of their doctrine and theology, that's what Christianity says a cult is. That's why they call Jehovah's Witnesses a cult. That's why they call Mormons a cult. And that's why they call Catholics a cult. Well, Christianity does the same exact thing. I've been talking about this since the 80s. I call it Christianity versus the Bible. And it gets them upset. They don't, obviously, if you're in a cult, you're going to get upset when someone starts peeling back the curtain and exposing their cultishness, right? So they start getting really uncomfortable around me when I start talking about what the Bible actually says about any given topic. And you can't get any more sensitive than, hey, here's the Jesus you believe in. He's dressed like an Egyptian. He walks like an Egyptian. He talks like an Egyptian. And he actually eats like an Egyptian, which is why your Jewish brothers and sisters, the people that actually support the root of the tree that you've been grafted into according to your Apostle Paul's writings, the apostle to the Gentiles, that's what he said. He said that you've been grafted into the commonwealth of Israel. You've been grafted into the olive tree of Israel. And don't even think for a moment that God would spare you when he didn't spare them. And don't become arrogant in your being grafted in because you don't support the root. Israel does. And if he was willing and went as far as cutting them off, what do you think he's going to do with you? And then he says, Israel's disobedience brought you to salvation. Imagine what their obedience would do. Imagine how that blessing would trickle down, right? Because the cock-a-doodle goes downhill. Imagine this, because they don't even talk about this because they can't handle it or they don't understand it. And that's God said through Paul. God says in Romans that imagine through Israel's rebellion and disobedience, you've come to salvation. How much more would that blessing be for you if they came to obedience? So we're supposed to provoke Israel to salvation, and you can't do that because you don't know what the heck you're talking about or what they're talking about. And the reason why Israel can't believe in your Jesus is because the scriptures, God himself, Father God, Elohim, Adonai, the King of the universe, Jesus' Father, tells them not to believe that nonsense. That's why they can't believe in your Jesus, because your Jesus isn't biblical. Your Jesus isn't scriptural. And that's why I called this my Jesus. Because I don't believe in your Jesus. I don't believe in the Jesus you've fabricated from your fear and ignorance of all things scriptural. The Tanakh, the Torah, the Old Testament. And because you're arrogant SOBs, sons of Baal. You like that one? That's not even original. Gene Scott came up with that one. You guys are arrogant about it. And so because I don't care how progressive you think you are. I don't care how envelope pushing you are. You are in the frickin' matrix, buddy. You are so locked into this Oh, see, I don't need your help. I can trigger myself. So, my Jesus, I don't believe in your Jesus. I believe in my Jesus. I believe, and that's why I'm saying this is what my Jesus is. So, in January, I would have been saved 42 years. I'll be saved 42 years. And and the longer I do this, the further away I am from my traditional Christian brothers and sisters when it comes to understanding of things, when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to processing the information, when it comes to connecting the dots, when it comes to depth of understanding, and ultimately when it comes down to fruit in our lives. And I've got so many examples, it's absolutely terrifying. So yesterday, I have a note here from yesterday. Yesterday, I said that Jesus didn't come to change Judaism. Well, he didn't. Jesus didn't come to change Judaism, but he did change one thing, except for the sacrifice for sin atonement piece. That's the only thing he changed, because Jesus didn't come to start a new religion. He only came to reinforce what his Father has been saying through the prophets since the very beginning. That's all Jesus did. Jesus came to reinforce what the Father has been saying through his prophets from the very beginning. And since Moses is the prophet that he chose to compile this oral Torah and put it on paper, that's why that's why we always bring up Moses. That's why Jesus always brings up Moses. That's why when you hear people talk about Moses in the temple, they're talking about the Torah and the temple. Whenever the New Testament refers to Moses, it means the name Moses encompasses the Torah. Because it's the law of Moses. It's the Torah of Moses. It's the instruction of Moses. It's the teaching of Moses. That's what Torah means. Not law. Torah doesn't mean law. Torah means instruction or teaching. The anti-Semitic, I have an agenda writers of the New Testament translated it to law and gave it a negative connotation. Yeah, I actually did say all that. Because, well, they have an agenda. You know what? I'm going to do this. Hold on one second. I'll fix this. I'll go. Boom, boom. There we go. There we go. That's better, right? Oh, yeah. So, see, it's because Torah doesn't mean law. Torah means instruction and teaching. And so whenever the New Testament reverts or mentions Moses, they're referencing the law, the Torah, right? I say law because that's the word you know. Well, that's the word a lot of you know. So Torah is the actual word. It means instruction and teaching. So that's what Moses represents, and that's what Moses means. And the reason why they do that, the reason why Moses is referenced, including by Jesus, Jesus flat out said, if you don't believe Moses, and if you don't understand Moses, you can't believe me and you won't understand me. Well, gee, Allan, you just answered your own question, because I sit here day and night, every week. I mean, I am constantly going, oh, Father, how do they not know how to read your Bible? How come they can't read the Bible? If, they can't keep track, they can't even keep up with a conversation that's written, like in a comment section. You know why comments are so whacked out online? It's not because of the format. It's not because of the format of conversation. No, it's because these people literally can't keep they can't keep a conversation, right? Because they're not actually listening to you; they're just talking, and so it doesn't make any sense, right? Well, in the same way, the reason why comment threads are so convoluted is because they can't keep a conversation, and they can't read. They don't know how to read. You would think. Well, here's what I think, and I'm a pretty reasonable guy. I think. Here's what I think. If it's in written form, how much easier is it for you to keep up? If it's in written form, how much easier is it for you to stay up? and keep up with the conversation and actually know what it is we're talking about. But see, they do the same thing that they do in verbal conversation. They're not actually listening. They're not actually reading the conversation. They're not actually having a conversation with you. They're just talking at you because they have a very important need to be heard. They have to have their own little soapbox. Well, then, dude, go do something with your life. You know, I mean, if we're going to engage, if we're going to engage in a conversation, at least share the mutual respect and have the conversation. Don't just talk at me, because I won't tolerate it. So, is it any wonder that if they can't have a conversation, if they can't keep a conversation verbally or in text, is it any wonder that when they read the Bible, they don't understand it? Is it any wonder that when they read the Bible, they pervert it? Is it any wonder that when they read the Bible, they twist it and turn it into this like disgusting, horrific, self-serving... Well, no, it shouldn't be, but it surprises me every time. So, that being the case, the Jesus that I know and the Jesus that I believe in, the Jesus that I serve, is really, really, turns out is completely different than the Jesus they serve and believe in, and the Jesus that they actually teach. They're not the same guy. Mine doesn't look like an Egyptian. Mine doesn't eat pork, doesn't dress like an Egyptian, doesn't look like an Egyptian, doesn't walk like an Egyptian. Mine's a Jew. A Torah observant charismatic. Go put that in your Torah pipe and smoke it. Go put that in your Christian pipe and smoke it. Jesus and the disciples that wrote the New Testament are Torah observant charismatics. If you're neither, I'm not sure what you're doing here. So, my note. Jesus didn't come to change Judaism except for the sacrifice for sin atonement piece. He became the ultimate sacrifice for sin atonement. So we don't have to sacrifice for sin atonement any longer because he's the Passover lamb that from the foundations of the earth, right? That's in New Testament too. Okay, so that's the only thing he changed. But all he did was come and show that everything his Father established anciently, like from long ago, from the garden, was not only still relevant, not a jot or tittle will be wiped out from the law, as he says in Matthew, right? He came to show and to prove that not only is his Father's instruction that was given to Moses to write down, this oral instruction from Adam and Eve. That's why Cain and Abel knew how to sacrifice. That's why Noah knew to take clean and unclean animals, right? This is found in the garden, and it goes through. Moses is the guy that writes it down. Jesus came to show and to prove and to say, hey, look, my dad's deal is still on the table, and you need to do it, and I'm going to give you a little bit of help. This is how you do it. And then, so if you read the red letters, he's actually teaching you how to keep the Torah, how to keep the instructions of Moses. And that's why he says, if you don't understand Moses and if you don't believe Moses, then you're not going to understand or believe me. And that's why Christians don't understand or believe him. And that's why when I talk to Christians, they don't understand me. Because I'm not talking Christianese. I'm not talking Christian bookstore one-liners. I'm past that. See, it's like a film. You know, there's a you know, when you go to a lake and the water's not moving, it's stagnant water, there's like a film, like a residue, like a top layer. Okay, that's where they're at. That's where they live. That's where they talk. That's where their theology and doctrine is based. Everything they do regarding this thing called faith lives in this little layer that sits on top of a lake that's standing water in a lake. Does that make sense? If you're in the chat room, and I know you are, I can see you guys. Does that make sense? Okay, do you know what I mean by that film, that thin layer of film on top of the lake? Okay, well, that's where the majority of us live. That's where we live and breathe. That's where our theology and doctrine is from. That's where our whole faith experience is based on, or is rooted in this thin film layer on top of the lake. Okay. So what happens is I show up and I don't live in this film layer. I don't live there. I don't talk there. My depth of relationship isn't there. My depth of understanding and experience doesn't there. No, it goes beneath that. See, it actually goes into the depths. And I know I sound like an arrogant SOB right now, but I'm sorry. Well, no, I'm not. It's true. I don't live in this thin, milky film layer of the lake. I actually go below that. I actually get deeper than that. And so what happens is they'll be talking up here in their little, and they think, oh, that's so deep. I've actually have heard those type of comments in these convoluted conversations that I sometimes find myself in. Oh, this, they'll be championing the other Muppet that's talking. See, here's the thing about Muppets or lawn gnomes. Muppets and lawn gnomes don't know that they're human until they're actually surrounded by humans. That's when they realize that they're Muppets or lawn gnomes. That's the idea. But when they're with their own kind, when they're with their ilk, they're all Muppets and they're all lawn gnomes. They don't know any better. They don't know any different. They actually think they're, whatever. And then a guy like me shows up and goes, and I poke a hole in their little film layer and I go, well, if we're saved by grace and grace alone, what happens to a whole entire chapter in James chapter 2 when he says, your faith without works is dead, and that you're justified by works. And I go in there and I poke that little hole in their film layer, and they lose their ever loving minds. And then it's like, then it's like all hands on deck, and it's one verse theology and doctrine coming at me. Ching, 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 ching. And it's like, you're using the Bible to dispute the Bible. That's not what I'm doing. I didn't quote James to tell you that you were wrong, that we're saved by grace and not by works. No, I came to say that it's not one or the other. See, you're saying it's grace only, no works involved. I'm saying it's both. Why? Because that's what the Bible says. So this is when I go, see what I'm saying? But see, they don't know how to have a conversation. They don't know how to address that. They don't know how to have that conversation because, well, they've been trained to instantly deflect and ward off and always go back to the main thing. For example, when I'm teaching people about Torah, if I'm talking to a bunch of Christians that are about Torah, this is what I have to tell them at the very beginning. I have a little red balloon. Well, I have a bunch of red balloons. Well, the idea is I should have a bunch of red balloons. I mean, see this red balloon? This red balloon is red because it represents the blood of Christ. And it represents your salvation and my salvation. We are saved solely, single-handedly, and exclusively because of the blood of Jesus of Nazareth, Yeshua HaMashiach of Nazareth. That's it. Nothing more. We are saved by the grace found in the free gift of salvation offered to us by Jesus of Nazareth, by Yeshua of Nazareth, the Messiah. So, in our conversation that we're about to have, right? You're saved, I'm saved, and we were both saved through Jesus of Nazareth. All right, so I'm going to put this balloon over here. That represents our salvation. We're clear. Are we in 1,000% agreement that we're saved only by Jesus and only through Jesus by the work of the cross? Yes. Awesome. We're in agreement. There's no disputing that whatsoever. I put that balloon right there. Boom. Okay. Now, let's talk about your need to be in obedience. Let's talk about your lack of obedience and your lack of da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And we start talking within a matter of minutes. But wait, Allan, we're saved by grace. Oh, pop, I get to pop the balloon. Pop, we aren't talking about salvation. Are we? Sunshine. No. We've already established salvation. And then I got to blow up another red balloon because it's going to happen again. This red balloon represents our salvation. We're not talking about salvation. We all have agreed. We're all in agreement that this red balloon represents our salvation in Jesus and in Him only. Not by works, not by anything but by his grace, and it's a free gift. Yes, okay. So we start talking again. We start trying to talk again about keeping the commandments. What do we do now that we're saved? What happens after we're saved? We're created for good works in Christ. What good work? What are those good works? The works of obedience. And then as soon as you actually start opening up the passages, even in the New Testament, once again, there's Muppet Boy who can't keep track in the conversation, right? That gets lost in conversation, is going to bring up once again but wait, Allan, but we're saved through grace. Pop, we're not talking about your salvation. We're not questioning salvation or your salvation. We're not talking about salvation. We're talking about what you have to do now because you're saved. Right? To bear fruit so that you're not find a fruitless branch that's cut off. This happens all the time. Constantly. It's like, we're not talking about that. We're not talking about, why do you have to take it? Don't take it back to step one. We're past step one. I'm trying, right? You keep running back to the teat of milk. But Allan, we got to suck on this. I'm like, no, dude. I'd like to introduce you to a chicken nugget. I'm just trying to get you to a chicken nugget, let alone this big, huge, massive steak over here. Here's a chicken nugget, but I can't eat that chicken nugget, Allan, because I didn't mean to do all that. I was going to make this nice. I was going to make this really nice. I wasn't going to make this it's a 2 minute. Someone reminded me, it's a 2 minute warning, Allan. It can't be nice. It's a 2 minute warning. That's right. Okay. So he didn't come to change a religion. He didn't come to start a new religion. He just came to back his father's play. Look, people, my dad said this through Moses and you're not doing it. And I'm telling you, I know you think I've come to do away with Moses, but I've not come to do away with Moses. Moses is an everlasting covenant until the end of the age, until heaven and earth pass away. All I'm here to do is to show you how to do it. I'm here to clarify. I'm here to leave absolutely no. I'm here to make sure there's no shadow of doubt. I'm here to make sure there's no question about that. That if you don't keep Moses' commandments, the Torah, you're going to die. And I won't know you, because I only know those that do the will of my Father. And the will of my Father is for you to bear godly fruit. And you can't bear godly fruit if you're not keeping the commandments. Because see, foundationally, if you loved me, you would keep my commandments. And those aren't just two. It's the Torah. It's the ones we can keep. And I'm not even going to get into that right now. I've done that too many times. Okay, now. So what happens is I have my Jesus. Let's start off with my Jesus. Who's my Jesus? What are we doing over here? What an incredible way of looking at it. I've never heard it put that way. Oh, geez. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate that. Okay, so here's what happens. My Jesus wasn't born on a day that historically has been set aside for pagan deities. And we might as well just throw Jesus into that big container, that big bucket of, hey, what day of the year does everybody observe and celebrate the births of pagan godless deities? December 25th. It's historical. I didn't make that up. I don't care what they're telling you on Facebook. It's history. So we're just going to throw Jesus into that bucket too, because, well, everyone's already celebrating because they're pagans. Might as well throw this one in there. Okay, my Jesus wasn't born on December 25th. Then you have the Christian Muppets that live on that thin film layer on top of the lake, and here's what they say. Oh, Allan, we're not worshiping a pagan deity. We're not worshiping the wreath that I just put on my tree, front of my door. Allan, we're not worshiping Tottenbaum. We're not worshiping Druid tree gods. We're not worshiping Christmas trees. We're not worshiping Yuletide. We're not doing any of those things, Allan. God knows my heart. Yeah, he does. And it's wicked and evil. And that's what he says. He says your heart is the most wicked and evil thing. He knows your heart, and it's wicked and evil. And if human intentions then you're even more screwed, because intentions don't mean jack squat. But why, what do you mean? Why am I an evil servant, and why are you casting me out because I hid and buried the talent? I meant to do good with it. See, it's here. It's here. See, here's my good intention. What happens to that guy? Yeah. You'll lose the conversation. Okay, you're going to lose that. You will lose that engagement with Father God if you don't change. So, but we don't do any of that pagan stuff, Alan. We're just celebrating Christmas. We're just observing. We're just recognizing the birth of Jesus and blah 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 blah. And here's right. It's all BS. That is literal cock-a-doodle-doo. And people actually say those things believing that what they're saying is concrete, foundational, absolute, okay with God stuff. And if you mentioned the bronze serpent and lighting incense to the bronze serpent, they would have no idea what it is you're talking about. So, what else do they do? Then they say, oh, Alan, we know Jesus wasn't born on December 25th. It's not the time that matters. God's not concerned about the actual day. He's all about our heart and all about us honoring his son in this way and da 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 da. It's like, nope. That is the biggest lie that you are deceivingly living under, Mr. Christian, Mr. Evangelical Protestant. And the biggest lie you live under is that God doesn't care about the calendar, that God doesn't care about what day you do what you do. That's a lie from hell. It's a demonic doctrine. It's a doctrine of demons because you've turned it into a doctrine. And I can't stress how importantly deceived you are in believing and thinking that the creator of heaven and earth, that the creator of the universe, that put sun, stars, and moon in the sky for timepieces and for seasons. If he would go out of his way to do that, don't you think he would give a rip about what time you do, what you do, when you do, let alone how you do it? You know how many Christians tell me it doesn't matter what day they keep the Sabbath? Jesus is the Lord of the Sabbath. They say that as if they just trumped me, as if they just trumped God and the entire Old Testament canon. They say that as if because Jesus is the Lord of the Sabbath, you don't have to keep the Sabbath. It is like it's exactly how there's other people out there right now that have the same convoluted, it doesn't make sense, lack of reasoning. That makes no sense at all. And there's another one that I'm going to get to that they do the same thing to. It's demonic, man. For you to believe that God doesn't care about what time you do what you do. He doesn't care about days. And then they misquote Paul in Colossians and Romans 14. They use, are you guys old enough to remember being told that you know just enough about computers to make you dangerous because you don't know enough about it? You know just enough about the Bible that to make you dangerous, Christian, Mr. Christian. And why do I sound so frustrated? Well, because this happens weekly. This is a weekly thing in my life because I'm out there, right? I'm having to deal with this stuff. Happened to me yesterday again, and it was just like it's twistedly perverted, and that pisses me off. Nothing infuriates me more than Christian brothers and sisters trapped in the construct of twisted perversion, thinking it's biblically sound and godly. I can't tell you how much. It's exactly like the Matrix. The first one, the first movie. There's two scenes. It's exactly like that. The scene where Morpheus is explaining the two pills to Neo, and then the simulation, the white room simulation, and how this is residual self-image, and God does care about the time. He cares about time. He cares about seasons. He cares about days. And he cares about it because, see, if you don't care, if you think he doesn't care about it, here's the problem. See, and I know you can't connect the dots because you're just not that bright. If you don't think that, if you believe that God doesn't care about time, if God doesn't care about days and holy days and seasons and months, if you believe that, and you do, because that's what you've been taught, if you believe that, then I guarantee you, you're not keeping his appointed times. And that, my friend, he said, was the beginning of worshiping him in truth. Jesus, the Samaritan woman. See, you live in this thin layer of film above the lake. You literally have no idea what's going on underneath you and how it all connects. You have no idea how not keeping the biblical Sabbath, how that affects you over here, because you don't make the connection. Because in order to make the connection, you have to get out of that thin layer and actually get into the depth and get into the water. You actually have to engage. You actually have to get involved. You have to get deep. Right? Proverbs says, it's a pleasure of. Correct me if I'm wrong. Michael Burke, you're probably going to be the first to be able to correct me on this. It's God's prerogative to hide a matter, to keep secrets. And then kings and the wise men, it's on you to figure those secrets out. Well, that's what's going on here. See, there's all this stuff going on, but it's not that hard. It's all there. You just need to you have to be like a Berean and actually open the freaking book and start connecting the dots to determine whether or not what. The Bereans looked in the law and the prophets to determine whether or not what Paul was saying about Jesus, the person of Messiah had come in the name, and the Messiah had come in the person of Jesus Christ. That's what he was teaching. And that you killed them, that you killed him. And so the Bereans looked at the Torah and the prophets to determine whether Paul was right. You don't know how to do that. You don't do that now. You think you do, but you don't. And if you were able to do that, and if you would do that, then you would see how important it is to understand that, yes, God does care about time. God does care about days. God does care about that stuff. He really does. And because you don't, that's what's dangerous, and that's what's really infuriating to me, because my Jesus does. See, we serve two different Jesuses. My Jesus does so much. Here's why Jesus does. Jesus is the Torah made flesh. Somehow you don't understand. You've heard that Jesus was the Word made flesh. That Jesus is the Bible made flesh. That's what you understand, that you believe that. What you don't understand, here's what Lucifer, the enemy of your soul, has done. He's kept this. He's inserted this little spacer between your understanding that Jesus is the Word made flesh and that Word is the Torah. And as long as he has that little little chamber of air, as long as he has that little spacer there, and you never make that connection, you'll continue to eat pork. You'll continue to not keep Leviticus 23. And that's dangerous. Now, I'm not going to sit here today and tell you you'll go to hell if you don't keep Leviticus 3 and if you don't eat pork. I'm not going to tell you that today. What I am going to tell you is this. If you're doing that there, I guarantee you that you've allowed Lucifer in your theology and doctrine to put spaces all over your life, all over your faith walk. That's why you don't speak in tongues, heal the sick, cast out demons, and raise the dead. That's why you don't believe in that stuff, Mr. Christian. That's why you believe that you can keep the Sabbath anytime you want and it doesn't matter to God. See what I'm saying? As long as you have those little spaces that keep you from making this connection or connecting those dots, you're screwed, man. Okay, so that's why on Monday I started off with saying, if I could prove to you that Jesus wasn't born on December 25th, but that he was actually born on Sukkot, would that matter to you? Would you then switch over? And I said, you wouldn't. The majority of you wouldn't, even with the truth. Jesus knows that because the Pharisees did the same thing. Yeah, I said that. So, the new covenant. We have to go there. So, my Jesus doesn't look like an Egyptian. Doesn't walk like an Egyptian, right? My Jesus is not an Egyptian. I actually believe in a Jesus that Jews can identify with. I actually believe in the biblical Jesus, and I know you say that you do too. Problem is if you and I sat down and you started drawing, we drew an outline, Jesus, and you started defining your Jesus, and I started defining mine, they're not going to look the same. Mine's going to be all about the Bible. Yours is going to be all about tradition, denomination, theology, and what your pastor told you. It's going to have very little to do with the actual narrative. That's how you know if it's the real Jesus or not. See, why is this important? Because there's a guy out there that's doing everything he can to deceive you into believing into something different, a counterfeit, an imposter. That's what he does. That's what he's done. That's what he's doing. So, new covenant. One of the other big, when it comes to my Jesus said, I make a new covenant with you, and it was, right? I know what my Jesus was talking about when he said that. Why? Well, because I actually understand the law and the prophets. Most of you don't, because you don't. You think that new covenant means he did away with the old covenant. No, the new covenant is the old covenant. The only difference is, the sin atonement part. So anyway, where do we find this new covenant thing? Is it only a New Testament thing? No. The best place to find this is in Jeremiah. Let's go there. Let's see. What does Jeremiah say? All right. Here's what Jeremiah says. I've got a little thing here. You know what I should do? Should I try I have a new Fandangle thing here. Should I try it? No, I was gonna say I could do it picture in picture, but I'm not gonna. What happens if I put it on? Do you see me? No. I don't think you see it, do you? No, it's in there, but I don't think you see it. Okay, no problem. Anyway, here the days are coming, says Adonai, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. There it is. There's the new covenant. This is a prophecy. God is speaking to Jeremiah. Jeremiah is a prophet. You can't, Jesus also says, you know what? They have the law and the prophets. They have everything they need. But because they don't submit to the law and the prophets, they're not going to believe someone that rises from the dead. See, it's not that it wasn't broken. God isn't broken. He sent Jesus because, here, let me do this. Here's the thing that you don't understand. It wasn't broken. He didn't send Jesus to fix anything. It wasn't broken. How do we know that? Because Jesus says that if you don't understand or believe Moses, you can't understand or believe him. That means Moses isn't broken. That means the Torah isn't broken. In chapter 5 of Matthew, Jesus says, not a jot or tittle of the Torah will be done away with until heaven and earth pass away, because it's not broken. There's nothing wrong with what God has established. God hasn't done anything that's bad, wrong, or that doesn't work. That's not why he sent Jesus. It's not broken. In the same way, the law and the prophets, he says that, look, it's the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, the leper. They both die. One goes to Sheol Hades, and the other one goes to Abraham's bosom. Do you remember the parable? And so the rich man in Sheol Hades tells, let Lazarus go and tell my family that the law and the prophets are true, so that they'll obey them, so they can avoid going to where I've gone, Sheol Hades. And the Abraham character in Jesus' parable says, they obviously don't believe the law and the prophets. They're not going to believe a man. And because they don't believe in the law and the prophets, they're not going to believe someone that rises from the dead. There was nothing, the law and the prophets weren't broken. That's not why Jesus came. Jesus came not because the law and the prophets were broken, not because it wasn't going to work. Well, no, he came to make it easier for you. Essentially, he came to put it to bring it into, he came so that you, human, would do the right thing and deal with this thing the way it was always intended to be done. What is that, Allan? An issue of your heart, not about bulls and goats, not about do's and don'ts, but about the heart attitude, the HEART attitude, the attitude of your heart. How do you know that, Allan? Well, because it says so. In Matthew chapter 5, Jesus gives examples on how he's going to fulfill the Torah. But because you've been taught and told, not because you did any research for yourself, because you've been taught and told that fulfill in Matthew means do away with, you're going to have a hard time with what I'm about to say. The word fulfill doesn't mean do away with. It means to expand, to empower, to give legs, to put into right place. Look it up. It's in the Greek. And then he gives examples of how he's going to do that. And one of the examples he uses is sexual immorality. You've been told. Moses teaches you that if you have sex with a woman that isn't your wife, you've committed adultery. I tell you that if you think about it. See, so Jesus actually raised the bar. No, he put it to where it was always up in the invisible realm of the heart. Moses and the prophets weren't broken. You're broken. That's why Jesus came, and that's why you need Jesus, because you're broken, and you're so jacked up, broken, you can't tell your ass from your face. That's how backwards and twisted you are. I'm sorry. You're so twisted and broken. That's why you need Jesus. And when Jesus comes through the power of the Holy Spirit, he just makes he brings peace and understanding and spirit of wisdom and revelation. And he straightens out the crooked places. He makes straight the crooked places in your mind, in your psyche, in your heart, in your emotions, and in your spirit. See, that's what Jesus does. That's why you need Jesus. So, it's not broken. Here the days are coming, says Adonai, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. It will not be like the covenant I made with their fathers on the day I took them by their hand and brought them out of the land of Egypt. He's talking about Moses. He's talking about Moses delivering Israel from Egypt. He's talking about what we talk about in this book, Exodus to Ingathering. Okay? This new covenant that I will make a new covenant with you. It's not going to be like the covenant I made with their fathers on the day I took them by their hand and brought them out of the land of Egypt, because they, for their part, violated my covenant. That's what the premise of this book, 1 Corinthians 10, 1 through 12, talks about Israel breaking that covenant. You need to know what that covenant is. You need to know what it is what was the covenant and how did they break it? Because Paul says in 1 Corinthians 10, 1 through 12, that it was a warning for you. Because they, for their part, violated my covenant, even though I, for my part, was a husband to them, says Adonai. For this is the covenant. All right, here it is. Here it is. I will make with the house of Israel after these days. Ready? I will put my Torah within them and write it on their hearts. I will be their God and they will be my people. That's what he told Moses before he even went to take Israel out. That's how far back this goes. So what's this new covenant? He's going to put his Torah in their heart. So when Jesus says, I'm the new covenant, remember how we were talking about how Christians can't, a lot of evangelical Christians can't actually keep a conversation because they're not actually having a conversation because they don't know how to have a conversation because they're just not very bright. And then and it's very difficult for them to even keep a conversation in writing because they're not actually having a conversation because they can't, and you would think that if it's in written form, they could actually go back to make sure, okay, this is what we're talking about, but they don't because that would mean they would be that would make them bright. They're just not very bright. Well, that reasoning makes them come up with like some of the weirdest, craziest things I can think of. And one of them is this. I can't tell you how often or how many times I have been told this by Christians. Well, yeah, Jeremiah, it says right there, the new covenant, he's going to put the Torah inside my heart. That means I don't have to do it. That means I don't have to keep your Mosaic law, Allan, because it's in my heart. And because it's in my heart, I don't have to do it. That's like, he's the Lord of the Sabbath, so I don't have to keep the Sabbath because he's the Lord of it. That's what I don't understand that. It makes no sense to me. The new covenant is he's going to put his Torah in your heart. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you, Father. That is amazing. Thank you, Father. And your demonic reasoning is, well, because he's done that, I don't have to keep it now. I don't have to be obedient. See, when you say that, I'm not under the law. You're saying I'm not under God's covenants because the Torah are the covenants of God. And for you to confess that you're not under his covenants, I know you probably don't understand that's what you're saying, but the enemy does. The spirits in the air understand what you just proclaimed, what you just professed, what you just confessed. You just said, and boy, do they freaking know it. I'm not under God's covenants. And they're coming after you as such. Or worse, they're just going to leave you alone and you're just going to die in the branch. You're going to die in the vine. This is really important right here, man. I will be your God. I will be their God and they will be my people. I write about that extensively in the Feast book because that's where you find it. Look at this. Say therefore to the people of Israel, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will deliver you from slavery to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great acts of judgment. I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God who has brought you out from the burdens of the Egyptians. He says, you are my treasured possession. What does this have to do with Jesus, Allan? Because my Jesus is all about this. I know your Jesus isn't, but mine is. Mine is all about this. Because you know what? Exodus, I just quoted that, right? Exodus 6 right here. Exodus 6 and 7 parallels what is said in the revelation of John regarding the marriage supper of the Lamb. Humanity was delivered from Egyptian slavery and given their inheritance of sonship. so that they could enter in and walk and possess their prophetic destiny. Why? I will be your, so because he wanted to marry us, see? That's why bridegroom, bride. See, you also don't understand that, which is why you're the church. He's not coming back for the church. He's coming back for the bride. And the bride readies herself. The white linen that the bride is wearing, the white linen the bride wears, are the righteous works, the righteous deeds of the saints. See, these dots are really important to connect, because if you have any space gaps between the dots, they won't connect. It's like electricity. If you have any, if it's not connecting, you're not going to, when you flip the switch, it won't come on. But you don't believe in works. You don't believe you have to do any works. You don't believe you have to do any works. So you're probably not wearing any linen. You're probably not wearing that white linen that's described in Revelation. And if you're a muppet about wearing white linen, that's not what I'm talking about. Don't even go there with me. I will be your God, and you will be my people, a nation of kings and priests, my treasured possession. That's what he says over and over and over and over in the Old Testament, through Moses and the prophets, over and over and over. And Jesus knows this because he's that word made flesh. And he is inviting us. You know why? You know why you were delivered from Egypt? So that you could sit at the marriage supper of the Lamb. So he delivered you from Egypt so that you would have a seat at the table at the marriage supper of the Lamb. With my Jesus. Your Jesus doesn't even, he doesn't have an invitation.
The views and opinions expressed during our broadcasts are solely those of the broadcast producers, hosts, and/or guests, etc., and are not necessarily the views or opinions of the Travelog Network, its sponsors, or affiliates.